No, it is. It has 1 hour and 7 minutes on it.
Oh, okay. About how long is it going?
I was,
Every time I
All right. Thank you, everybody, for being here. This is our last class, and when we leave here tonight, we will be able to look at any score and do harmonic analysis of it. Actually, I'm very pleased. I see a lot of the same faces here, and that's very satisfying to me as an educator.
I'm not saying I'm not overwhelmed.
Good. That's good to know, because this is a subject that can, for some musicians, can just be as dry as bones. You don't even want to know. And I find that to be crazy kind of, because this will help you in anything that you want to do musically. Knowledge is always a good thing. Use it properly and the way it's designed to be used. I learned so much myself. I went to college for music, but I learned most of what I learned harmonically, I learned from a jazz guitarist that was played 40s bebop music. And I have to honestly say, I learned so much more from him than I ever learned from college. And the reason for that was that everything that he taught me was practical. He taught me to listen for the way something sounds, not the way that you write it out. You say, what does it sound like? And that's what you always want to go by when you listen to music. How does it sound? What does it sound like? And so we went from there, and he was able to explain everything harmonically that was going on. If I had a question with him, like why does this work, he could explain it to me, which is something when I was studying classical music, I mean, they didn't put a premium on that. Now, that may have changed over the years. I mean, this is in the 70s when I was going to college, so it was like you just learned, if there was a fly on the paper, you read it. And that was it, you know. And you did do harmonic analysis, but it wasn't, you just wrote a bunch of numbers out and you go, well, why does that work or why doesn't it work? And those kinds of things just weren't explained. And my instructor, he lived on Staten Island. He was a genius with this kind of stuff. And part of his genius was in being able to explain it so that you could digest it. Sometimes this is one of those kinds of subjects that I've met a lot of people. In fact, a guitar player friend of mine who I taught many years ago still says that he had an aha moment at that one point. And for me as an instructor, that is the greatest thing. It's the greatest feeling, you know, that something's clicked. But anyway, I think what we're going to do tonight is there's a few things I want to cover. I want to cover 4-part harmony. I'm going to cover suspensions and inversions, the modes, and I want to try to see if we can get on just a little bit with rhythm, so that we understand what the most important aspect of music, which is rhythm. Okay, so I wrote this chart out. I've been teaching the Elevate kids, so some of this is just from stuff that I've written out for them. And instead of rewriting it and wasting the paper here, I'm just going to go by this. We've worked on the C scale. Remember C, E, F, G, A, B, C. And what I did then is I went down this way because I wanted to show also that along with the horizontal aspect of music, the vertical takes place at exactly the same point. So that the vertical part, the part that we get our harmony from, if you started like the C, E, G, which is the third, the major third, and then the minor third, and then this major third right here when we went up to 4-part harmony, if you started that scale, the C scale, on the E note, and then the G note, and then the B note, you would see that you would get all of your chords written out that way, because they're all scales. Like the first, starting on C, the tonic, this one will give you the root note of every chord that you're going to come across. This line will give you every third, this line will give you every fifth, and this will give you every seventh. So basically what all of this is, it's not only horizontal aspect of music, but the vertical that comes underneath it. These all just happen to be playing at the same time and they're making those chords. And these, we're going to talk a little bit about that. These are all modes. So the C scale starting on the E note, if you play that, it's a particular mode. It's known as the Phrygian. We're going to listen to that too. This mode, starting on G, the Mixolydian, starts right here. So that's a G scale. It's a C scale starting on G, and it gives you a Mixolydian mode. And then right here, the B, starting right there, that's the Locrian mode. So all of these are the C scale starting on a different note. Sophia, can you come over here?
Sure.
Sophia, you all probably know her as our choir person.
Sofía,
Yes.
¿qué tal es? Sombrero.
Yes.
Mario.
Yes.
I'm gonna get that first.
You can do your. Okay. I'd like you to play C scale.
Okay. You know what? This is better. How about this?
Oh, look at. Wow.
Yeah.
So talented.
Well, it gets better, right?
Yeah.
Why not? Here, so
Sure.
C, E, F, G, A, B, C.
Now start the C scale starting on E. The E note.
You mean like major?
C major scale starting on E. Oh, can you actually do it up from where you were? Now, can you play the C scale and the mode you just played together? Okay, now play the C scale starting on G. And then put those three together.
There you go.
See how that worked? Those are all scales. Now, if you can, add the seventh too. So, start,
circus.
yes, do a C scale starting on B.
Oh.
It's a Locrian, that's the Locrian mode. It's also the minor 7 flat 5 scale. If you remember, on the C scale, you remember when we were at the 7th degree? That was our diminished chord. And in 4-part harmony, it's half diminished. And half diminished is also known as a minor 7 with a flatted 5th. So start, do all 4 now. Oh, you can. There, that's 4-part harmony. It's 4 separate scales running simultaneously. Yeah.
So what is a mode exactly?
A mode is the parent scale starting on the next note.
Okay.
So this is, and actually the tonic scale is also known as a mode. It's the Ionian mode. Okay, so yeah, I might as well just explain this to you real quick.
Could you spell host?
Sure. I-O-N-I-A-N. I'm sorry, I'm gonna have to use a new piece of paper. This one's I've already used that one up. So, these are modes. And you're gonna see, when I'm explaining this, you're gonna find that we already know one of the modes, which is the natural minor, the 6th degree of the major scale. So anyway, starting here, C scale, this is the Ionian. The second, this would be, in our case, would be D minor. I'll say C. That's the Dorian. The third, E minor, is Phrygian. Okay, the fourth, beautiful scale, is, I don't know what to do. F is the Lydian. The fifth is the Mixolydian. sixth is the Aeolian. Sorry. I had it right the first time. And the seventh is the Locrian. So they all end in Ians. They're all Ians.
Huh?
So, okay. So this would be G, A, and B. So that's, sorry, that would be A minor and B diminished. Those are the modes of the major scale. And all of this is this, the Dorian, is a C scale starting on D. That's a C scale starting on E. That's a C scale starting on F, G, A, and B. That's all the modes are.
Is the Phrygian also a, a scale?
It is, yes. And let's, since you brought that question up, let's look at it. This would be a C scale starting on E. So look what we have here. Right away, this tells you that the color of this mode is different because you already have, right at the beginning, you have a half step. So can you play E, F, G, A, B, C, D? I always think of this kind of as a Spanish sounding scale just because of that half step in the beginning. Yeah, A minor would be the C scale starting on A. E minor. It's an E minor. Phrygian's a minor scale in E. If you start on E, it's an E minor scale.
But E Phrygian
Yeah.
is same as A minor scale.
Oh, E Phrygian.
Right, so I mean, C Phrygian or C, right, starting on E,
Mm-hmm.
that quality is the same as A minor in terms of notes.
Well, yeah, I mean, if you start over here,
Right.
yeah, yeah, and they're all like that. Yes, they're all interrelated that way.
Right.
And Lydian, if you look at that one, that's F, G, A, B, C, D, E. You'll see right away, this has a major sound. It's got the F, A, and C in it. So each mode has a different, color sound to it. Like if I played an E, if you're harmonizing on the C scale and you play an E minor, the chord scale that you would use would be a Phrygian chord scale. It'd be E, F, G, A, B, C, D. There are other scales, other minor scales, but that one works in the key of C. The reason you wouldn't use like an E minor scale was because an E minor scale has F sharp in it. And you don't want to use that when you're playing in the key of C because that's an outside note.
Why do you put E minor there on?
Yeah, it's still an E minor. Right here? Yeah, but that's not the scale I'm using. I'm just saying that's the tonality of the scale. It's a minor scale.
Oh.
Yeah, maybe I should,
Oh,
if it helps,
okay.
just think of
Okay.
it, just think of it as minor, yeah.
Minor.
Yes.
Yeah, okay,
Yeah. It's a minor scale with a flatted second.
okay.
Okay, and all that means is that there's a half step between, where normally, like on a normal minor scale, there's a whole step between the first note and the second note. The Phrygian has a half step. That's what gives it its particular sound. And the Lydian, the particular sound in the Lydian is on the 4th degree. Can you just play an F major scale? Okay, now play an F Lydian instead of the B flat, play a B. That's a pretty scale. We use that a lot. That's because instead of a normal F major scale would have B flat, but since this is a mode of the C scale, it doesn't. We can't break our rules. This has to stay in the scale system. So what happens is that it's a raised fourth. Normally in F, in order for it to be the F scale, it has to meet all the criteria we talked about. And this one doesn't. This mode doesn't. Henceforth, it's not an F scale, it's an F mode, and it's the Lydian mode. Same thing with Mixolydian. We've talked about this one a lot. This is our dominant seventh sound, the flat seventh sound. So starting on G, play C scale. Did you hear what note is outside? Like everything's major on here except what? I mean, everything is from the major scale except what note? Right. I'm sorry, I didn't write that right. It should be F. It's the seventh scale degree, which in a major scale is always a half step away from the tonic. This is not a half step away from the tonic. It's a whole step away.
There's some of that wrong.
Oh, that's okay. Yeah. And I didn't write it. I should have started here. So that makes this a flat seven, and that's the Mixolydian sound. It's also what we call the dominant sound. It's and the key is C. It would be a C scale starting on G, and it ends up having that. And then this guy we've already talked about. We derive all of our relative minors from the 6th degree scale, and that's the Aeolian. It's the natural minor scale. So this is the C scale starting on A. Play that Yeah, that's an A minor scale. Let's just call it minor. I think you're right, David. Should call it. It's a minor sound. It's a natural minor sound.
How did they come up with the names like Ionian?
It's Greek. I can say it's all Greek to me. Right?
Blame the Greeks.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, and I'm not sure. I know that there's such a thing as an Ionian column, but I wouldn't be able to tell you exactly what that is. Yeah. Different. Phrygia was part of Asia Minor, I think. So that I imagine that's what they named them after. That kind of thing. Yes.
Yeah, those are places that Paul visited, yes.
Yes. That's right. You're absolutely
So
right.
Mixolydian was when Paul went into a bar.
Great joke.
Can you put the second one up there too for us? So we can write that one?
This one here?
Yeah.
Oh, of course. He's starting in D. And if I had taken a little more care, I could have written all in the numbers over here. Like Zach pointed out, I didn't do that very well. But if you did, you can see where all the number ones and the number twos all line up. So all the modes, all I'm going to say about the modes is, and that it's important to know them, is that if you have a C scale and you start that C scale on any note other than C and you're staying within the parameters of the C scale, you will get a mode. And each mode has a different flavor. Like you see, this is a C major scale, but when you start it on D, it has a minor flavor. You start it on E, it has a minor flavor. You start it on F, it has a major. G, it has a major. Here it has a minor, and here our friend is the diminished, the one that we like so much. Go ahead and play the low green. Starting with B. Okay, that's this sound. It's half diminished in 4-part harmony. In 3-part, it's just simply diminished. 2 minor thirds. And you add a major third at the end, and that gives you that. So that, I mean, if you have a keyboard, if there's any way that you can work on this, it's just, all you need to do is just start any scale that you're working on any other note other than the tonic, and you'll get your modes. You just derive from that. But that's, and they sound, I mean, you're using, that's the beauty of actually even like something as simple as the C scale. You can make the C scale have minor inflections, diminished inflections, anything. It's still a C scale. It's like, I think the first time when I played the guitar, and I played the C note, and then I played other notes along with it. It's all contextualized. That's what it is. I mean, it's how you, it's where that note fits in. Like a C note is not only the tonic in C, it's the 5th degree in an F chord. It's the 3rd degree in an A flat chord. You see, it's the 7th in a D chord, the flat 7th in a D chord. So it's still that note, but it has all of these different, various disguises, if you will. You know, that you can say, yeah, that's still a C note, but look how much different it sounds when it's played in a D chord. So that's the whole thing about harmony. Is if you just hit notes at random, like every 5 or 10 seconds, it's not going to tell you anything. It's when you get them together and you play them together, then all of a sudden there's like a whole world sort of opens up as far as what's happening harmonically. So is that pretty good with the modes? You pretty good with
I
that?
just noticed something.
Yeah.
The Aeolian is the same as the minor scale.
That's right, it is the minor scale. It's the natural minor scale. That's where we get the relative minor tone. So when you're in the key of C, you're also in the key of A. Same key signature, yeah. So that's why I said you already learned a mode. This one, when we talked about it, the circle of fifths, where you have that, the relative minor, that's the 6th degree. And every scale has modes. Every minor scale has modes. Harmonic minor has its modes. So if you had a harmonic minor scale, you started on any degree of the harmonic minor scale, you would be getting, that's the 2nd mode, the 3rd mode, the 4th mode. They're not named like the major scale is because they're not really as common. Although in some forms, like in classical music, a lot of times you would use the 5th degree of the harmonic minor scale.
And what would that be?
Of which?
The harmonic, 5th degree of the harmonic minor scale?
Oh, well, if you, in the key of C, Sophia, you want to come up and just play the harmonic minor?
In the key of C?
Yes, play the C. So,
So,
C. Right. That's a minor scale with a natural 7th in it.
raised.
Yeah.
Minor, regular.
Well, no, it's a natural. A flatted 7th would be the dominant 7th. But this has a natural, recurring natural.
This one,
Yeah.
raised.
It has a raised. It's actually the leading tone. Yeah. Can you play that scale starting on the 5?
On the 5 or
C. Just started on G.
play that scale.
Yeah, that started on G.
With G. G.
Yeah.
Play the harmonic minor.
Yeah. Okay. Although it's the notes, it's a slightly different thing because you're starting on G.
You mean G minor harmonic? G harmonic minor? Is that what you're
Yeah.
saying?
See, what you just did with C is your leading tone was B, right?
Yeah, B is a leading
Okay.
tone.
So start that scale from the G note and then play it exactly like what you just played.
So not G minor harmonic.
No,
Oh, that's what I was
This is the 5th. This would be the 5th
Oh,
mode
okay.
of the harmonic minor scale. So it's the same notes that are in there, but starting on G.
So out of A minor. Right?
Out
And
of
there,
S.
but
We did C minor to start with. Here. This is what we started
we
with.
played A minor harmonic out of C major.
That's what you just played, right?
No.
That's the C minor harmonic scale. Harmonic
Oh.
minor.
Did I play C minor? What did I play?
Yeah, you should, yeah, C.
Oh,
That's
right.
okay, it's all right. That's right.
can play C minor harmonic.
That's right. So starting here would be G. Start on G, A flat. That's the fifth. That's the fifth mode of the harmonic minor scale, and that's used a lot to go, like from in a minor. If you're in a minor key, when you're on the 5/7, which is usually still dominant, you could use that scale to solo with.
Okay.
Sorry for the confusion. Yeah.
No, I'm.
But that's, yeah. So what Sophia was doing was actually starting on either A, I forget, was it A or?
Initially, I was playing A harmonic minor.
Right,
Now
because of being a relative.
Right, on
Right.
the C major.
Yeah, yeah, I
But
just,
now that one is
yeah.
C minor, which is
Right.
C
C, D, E.
major, relative minor of E major, right?
I don't
So
know.
this is an E major Aeolian
Yeah, no,
in E major.
in E major, the Aeolian and C sharp. Yeah. The sixth,
Yeah, that one.
yeah.
So like we're starting Aeolian.
Right.
Oh, wait, okay.
But this is,
Three
this is,
steps later.
yeah, I didn't want the, I just wanted the harmonic minor.
Okay, harmonic minor of C minor. Okay.
Yeah. B. That's it. That's a C minor. That's, by the way, that's the C minor harmonic scale.
Right,
All
okay.
right. Great. And all I'm saying about that is that you can extrapolate the same kind of information from here, starting on any different. What we just did, what Sophia just did, is she started on the 5th degree. So it was C, G, A flat, so you follow that, B, C, D, E flat, and F. So that's a C harmonic minor scale starting on the 5th degree.
Why do you call it harmonic?
Well, that's just the naming convention for this particular scale. As opposed to, if you look at this scale.
What makes it harmonic? I mean, what's the mathematical formula?
Well, great question.
That's what I
Here,
do.
we're gonna get deep into it right now.
I'm a mathematician.
Oh, okay.
I only want to know the
Oh, you're
mathematical
scaring me, Don.
formula.
You're scaring me. I'm not a, this would be the 1, the 2, 3, the 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay, so if you look at that, that's C to D, whole step, half step. So right away you know it's going to be minor, C to E flat.
Oh,
Okay? Then E flat to G, that's a major third, so we know it's a minor chord. So that's, the scale is derivative minor. The 5 is the same, the 6, in minor scales, you have a lot of variation on the 6 and the 7 and on the 2. So what this is that you have a normal 2, but you have a flattened 6. Can you play this again, Sophia? On C? Yeah. Now play that with an A. Same scale. And then go B, and then C. That's a melodic minor scale. And the difference is that the 6th is natural. The 6th is not flattened. It's just, it's natural, yeah.
So is there a formula, like, for
Yes,
the meridian, whatever, is in minor third, major third?
yes.
This is like minor third and
The main
Yeah.
formula you have to remember, especially with the major scale, it'll always be that formula like I gave you. Like whole, when we started C, D, E, whole tone, half.
then, yeah.
With minor scales, you have 3 or 4 different ones. The only thing that has to work with them is that you have to have this interval and this interval. That has to be a minor third, that has to be a major third, to make it a minor.
Oh, okay.
And so the differences in the scales are, the harmonic minor has a flat 6 and a raised or natural, I call it natural. It's the 7 that occurs naturally in the C scale, or you can say raised. Because there's also the flattened 7. Now,
Maybe we can show the natural first.
Yeah.
Then how we go to harmonic,
Sure.
that would make more sense, right?
Sure.
What do you think?
yeah, play the natural scales.
So, how about we use a C major scale?
Well, you could actually, Yeah, this is a natural, you mean the A minor, the A, A, L?
It's easier to
Okay.
write, so what do you think?
Sure.
So.
This, we're gonna stay in the key of C, but we're gonna go to A minor. This will give you the natural scale. The relative minor is always the natural minor scale. So it's all the white keys starting on A.
Oh, yeah.
This is the relative minor
Yes.
of this
C scale.
C scale,
Mhm.
which is C major scale is starting with A, right?
Okay, let's analyze that then. This is the 1, the 2. There's your minor third, there's your major third. So you know that it's a minor scale. So A has a normal second, minor third, fourth, fifth, flat 6, flat 7, A. So a natural minor scale has a flat 6, a flat 7. It's a minor with a flattened 6 and a flattened 7. A harmonic minor has a flattened 6 and a regular 7. It's that leaf right there. Yeah.
So, raise
Okay.
7.
Okay.
7 to
Yes, and melodic minor is 6 and 7. Yes, melodic minor.
They're all minor.
They're all minors. Yeah.
That formula.
Yeah, I mean, these are the distinguishing characteristics of these 3 minor scales. The natural has a flat 6 and a flat 7. Harmonic has a flat 6. A raised 7. Melodic has a regular 6 and a raised 7.
Just a regular 6 and a raised 7.
Yeah, well, I just call them, if they naturally occur, like in the scale, like in the C scale, if this were C and were an A note, I would just call it a regular 6. If it were an A flat, I'd call it a flattened 6.
And 7's always.
Yeah, 7 can be flat or it can be raised. What Sophia says raised, I mean, you can say raised, I just say that it occurs naturally in the chord. We mean the same thing. No. This 7 just means that in the case of like an A minor melodic, that would be a G sharp. It's a leading tone.
So compared to natural 7th, so natural minor, 7th is always, let's see.
Flat, it's flat
Flat.
7.
So let's say we're in A minor, right? The C major has everything white key, right? And then you start it on A, everything minor, everything white key, right? That's A minor, right? Then the 7th note, whatever the 7th note is of the minor, that's to make the
Flat.
harmonic,
Mhm.
you go half step up. That's why we call
So
it
it's a leading tone.
raised 7th,
Yeah.
raised
Oh, I
7th.
see.
Then it becomes harmonic.
Yeah.
But if for melodic, instead of whatever key are in, natural minor form, by the 6th note, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6,
It's
go up half step,
raised.
and the 7th note, half step up, then
There you
that
go.
makes a melodic,
Yeah.
melodic.
Yeah.
Down the way around.
Yeah, so I mean, the way that I write it is just that it's either a flattened 6 or a flattened 7. If it's just a 7, then it's a leading tone.
So you used flat, but I haven't heard sharp.
Right, well, we don't talk about, there is no, here's when you use sharp.
Half up and half down, flat's half down.
Yeah, a flat is always a half step below the note that you're targeting. And in this case, we don't need to use sharps. And the main reason you don't use it is you would be spelling that incorrectly harmonically. You could say, I mean, if like for the flattened 7th, you could, maybe flat 6, you could say that's a sharp 5, but that's not really what it is, because the 5 is already in the scale. So you don't want to say it's got a 5 and a sharp 5 in it. That's the only reason we do that. So it's a naming convention. Right, Kathy? Does that make kind of, basically what I would like for you to leave here with is that you have a major scale, the one that we derived all of our other chords from, and you have basically 3 minor scales that we work from. The minors seem to have a lot more going for them. I don't know what the deal is, but there's more variations in that. However, I will say that the Lydian mode is also a major scale, but it's got the raised 4th in it. So it's not, there are other conventions, and you can actually have a scale, a C scale, that has a flattened second. So you could go from C to D flat and then to E, you know? So you have, as long as you're 1, 3, and 5, that's where you get the general sound of what the scale is, from the 1, the 3, and the 5. Is it minor, is it major, is it diminished, is it augmented? I think that's one thing we haven't touched on yet, is augmented. And augmented doesn't naturally occur in the C scale. It does occur naturally in the harmonic minor and in the melodic minor. And all the augmented is this. It's what we call the hashtag 5, which, no, we don't call it. I call it that. Which is sort of, it's a sharp 5. Yeah. So an augmented chord, if we wanted to make a C augmented chord, what would we do? We have C, D, E, F, G, A, B. What would, since I've already kind of given it away, what's the note that we would raise? Yeah. So if we had, can you play this with you? C, E, G sharp.
That's what that.
No, C, E, G sharp. That's an augmented chord. I'll play just a regular C chord. I go to the augmented. Hear that sound? Now just go on C, do, 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 then go to the 6. The same. 6, 8, C6. Same chord, just go up to A with your middle finger.
That's
No, A. No, sorry. There you go.
oh, that.
Yeah.
That's the top one.
Go back down. You hear that sound? That's just the 5. That's 5, sharp 5, 6, sharp 5, 5.
This one is basically A minor inverted.
Yeah, C6. So that's how it works. That's the augmented sound. Now play C, E, G sharp, and B flat. No, G sharp, C, E, G sharp, B flat.
What?
Yeah, that's an augmented 7th chord. Now play C, E, G sharp, B. That's a major 7th with a raised 5th. Hear that sound? That's a very common jazz
What one is
chord.
that one?
What's that?
The raised fifth is augmented.
Yes, augmented. Raised, augmented, sharp. Whenever you hear, there's so many different ways that musicians talk about this stuff. I mean, classical musicians would probably use the word augmented. Jazz musician would probably say a sharp 5. Right, you know, it's just the way, the lingo, yeah, whatever context you happen to be in. But the first one that Sophia played with the B flat, that all of a sudden made this scale a dominant scale because it lowered the 7th. So she was playing 1, 3, sharp 5, flat 7. And that gave us a dominant, a 7 sharp 5 sound. That's how I name. When I name chords, I say 7 sharp 5, 13 flat 9, something. That's just the way that I do it. You don't have to do it that way. It's just how it sounds. So anyway, so what we'll do right now is and I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on this. On this last word. Since we're in the C scale, I'm going to give you these notes here. This is the G. This is the C scale starting on G. It's the Mixolydian mode. It's the dominant. The reason I'm spending a little more time on this is that I want you to know that on this particular chord in the key of C, you can add as much dissonance as the chord will allow. You can change this chord more than any other chord in the scale system. And this happened pretty much through jazz, because we have this. This is our 1, this is our 3, this is our 5. This is what makes the G chord right here. This is our 7, and the reason it's different is because it's flattened. And the reason for that, this is what's called a tritone, and I think I went over this already, but that's the interval right there between the B and the F. That's a flattened fifth interval, the tritone is. It's the one that they didn't allow in the Middle Ages. Then when you keep going on in sevenths, or in thirds, like what we did, because each interval here is a third, these numbers all get extensions, okay? So that if I'm playing a G7 chord, and I'm playing a G7 with a flatted ninth, that means, if you look at that, I'm playing a G7, G, B, D, F, and this is my 9 right here. All 9 means is that it's 2. It's in the G system, it's the second degree, but since it's an octave above the G, we call it a 9. So there's nothing new here under the sun. Basically, that's just a 2, but its position in the chord is an octave above. So we call it a 9. So if I'm playing a G7 with a flatted 9, it means I'm playing a G7 chord with an A flat. And these extensions right here, and the 5, you can do just about anything. You can raise or lower the 5. So you can have G, B, D sharp. You can have G, B, D flat. You can't do anything to this guy. This guy has to stay there. And so does this guy. And the root. You have to have, if you decide to play with the root, you have to do that. But these two notes, right here, have to be there. The tritone has to be there in the dominant 7 chord. And then you can hang anything you want. Can we play these stuff here? Play G, B, D, F. I'll play G, B, D, F, A. That's a 9th chord. You hear that sound? Now play G, B, D, F, A flat. That's a 7 flat 9. Okay, now play an A sharp. 7 sharp 9. The Jimi Hendrix chord. Yep. Okay, now play G, B, D, F, and C. That's an 11. You hear that sound? Now play G, B, D, F, and E. That's a 13th. Those are pretty standard jazz chords.
So how would you notate that, the last one you just did?
Notated.
The writing, what you just played.
Oh, I would just do this. Whenever you see a number like this, 13, the dominant is implied. You don't have to write 7.
Oh.
The dominant's implied in that chord. The reason I write it here is that you can have a flat 9. You just have to, like you could write that if you like, but in most conventions you don't do that. Or not flat 7, you just write this. And that's implied dominant. If it were major, I would write it like this. G major 7, or like this. So if you see a chord sheet that has a C7 on it, to me that's implied dominant. Now, the problem comes in that there's some places where they write a dominant 7th like that with a dash. So you have to know. It's very confusing. I'll give you that. It's very confusing. But in the context of music, when you're playing it, if you see, oh, he certainly didn't mean a major 7th here, he meant a flatted 7th. So you just kind of figure it out. But this was really hard, like when I was doing playing in big band stuff in college. It's like, I would be used to seeing it written like this or like that, and then when I got into those, some of the trumpet, the horn scores and the rhythm chart scores had sevenths written like this. So I didn't, you know. Yeah, it's just different. There's just a lot of variation. But anyway, do you see how this works? The ladder works up here. You don't necessarily. I mean, you can have the 10th, but it's just the 3rd degree iterated again.
So which
So-
ones have to stay exactly the same, the G, the
The
B,
3
and
and
the
the,
F?
yeah, the G is just the tonic. You don't even have to use that in the chord if you don't want to. The bass player a lot of times will play the tonic if you're in a band situation. If not, that's the root note of the chord.
In other words, it will be played, it's just,
Yeah, by somebody else.
Yeah, yeah. Or imply it. You don't always have to do that. A lot of times you could play, like a chord solo, like guitar soloists and sometimes even piano soloists will play maybe the B, you know, the B, the F, and the C. They won't even, you don't have to do it. A lot of times it's implied. I know what they're doing right here. It's going to that. You'll find out later on that you don't have to play everything. Sometimes you imply things. Guitar players would never play this whole chord because we can't. You pick notes that are your color notes, and the 3 and the 7 are always extremely important. I should say flat 7. The 3 and the flat 7 in a dominant chord are always extremely important to have in the chord. Then you can hang all the other stuff up. The 5, only important if you're altering it. If it's a natural 5 within the dominant chord, you don't even have to play it. But if you change it to sharp 5 or flat 5, yeah, you should play it. Okay, so we all know that the dominant chord is the one. It's like in jazz music, can you play A minor 7, then D7,
A minor
A
7.
minor 7 to D7, D7, no, D flat 7, dominant.
Wait, E flat.
No, D, like D7. That's major 7.
Major?
Major 7.
Major 7.
No, just regular 7. D7. Not major 7. This,
Wait,
yeah.
E minor 7?
No. Like an A minor 7 chord. Okay, then D7, D, F sharp.
Oh.
Yeah, but not the major 7. It's C. That's it.
Oh,
Dominant 7.
Dominant 7.
Yes. So that, then G major 7. That's a 2-5-1. Yeah, so the 2 minor 7, which is A, C, E, G, right? Okay, then no, D, F sharp, A, C, which is the dominant 7. D, F sharp, A, C. Right, that's the 7. See, what she was playing was the C major 7. That's not what you would do in a 2-5-1 jazz progression. You're going from the minor 7, the 2, to the 5-7. Mhm. To the 1. Right. So that second chord that she played, the D7, is the one that in this key we decided to do it in G, but you could put all the variations in it. So she, instead of where Sophia played a D7, she could have played a D7 flat 9, a D7 sharp 9, a D13 flat 9. You could play all of that. Yeah, the D7 would have an E flat in it too. The D7 would have an E flat. And then E flat. That's a 7 flat. You could extend it if you want to, right? And then still go to major 7. Yeah. You see how all of those things you can do with that? You can, and they'll all fall back because the harmony, this is a very, very unstable interval right here. And the reason it feels so fulfilling to go to the 1 is because these notes resolve to chords in the 1, to the notes in the 1 chord. That's why it's so important to keep those in there. Like, if you see this, since we're in the key of G, the F usually resolves downward to the E, and the B resolves upward to the C. That's just one way that you could do it, and it's only a half-step motion. So you're going from the 3 in the G chord to the tonic in the 1 chord, and the F, which is the flat 7 in the G, stepwise goes down a half step to the C, which is the 3rd of the C chord. And it sounds good to our ears, you know? That's, I mean, ultimately, anything that we do harmonically is because it sounds good to our ears. We've become accustomed to it. I mean, and the more music that I listen to, like, and Sophia and I were talking about this, about modern music, I've grown to love some modern music, which some people absolutely hate it. It just sounds dissonant. So what we view as dissonance is a lot of times in the ear of the beholder. By dissonance, I mean not necessarily the classical sense, but that it sounds abrasive to our ear. Can you play? Let's play a 7 sharp 9. Play G, B, D, F, and an A sharp. And A sharp. Yeah, can you play that as a chord? That chord, a lot of people here, they go, oh, it sounds ugly, but that's a mainstay chord in a lot of rock music, a lot of funk music. That chord is right there. And I think it's become that. I mean, I'm sure that they used that in classical times. Yeah, Stravinsky probably did use it. I mean, yeah. But I mean, his music was, when he premiered The Rite of Spring in Paris, people ran out of the concert hall. They would scream. They just thought it was the worst thing they've ever heard. And now, I mean, now it's viewed as a masterpiece. So our concept of music it's always evolving, I think. Not in the sense that, not in a bad sense, but in that what our ears can get used to. And a lot of stuff always comes back again, and all of a sudden we'll go through this huge period of complexity, and then everything becomes simple. It's just how it goes. Okay, so we talked about the modes. Oh, okay. So here, as if we haven't had enough already, I'm going to talk about suspensions and inversions, right? When you're looking, can we stay on the G for a little bit? Because I'm tired of switching to C. We'll just change that. Okay. That's a key scale. All right. So a suspension is a note that is taking the place of the 3. And you can suspend on the 2, and you can suspend on the 4. What that means is that when you're suspending, it means you're playing the second note of the chord, which is in this case would be an A. If you see this written like this, and you don't often, because I don't know for what reason, a lot of times it's written as G2, which is really not what it is. But if you see that, that means that instead of playing G, B, D, you're playing G, A, D. Can you play that, Sophia? Play a G chord and then play a G sus2. Not G sus2. Hear that? It's still a G chord, but all of a sudden, when you take the 3 away, you're taking away the, hey, this is what I am. I'm a major chord. Everyone look, I'm a major. And all of a sudden, you're adding ambiguity into the sound.
Because you don't know.
So
You don't know if
so
it's
what-
major.
so
You don't
what
know
does
if
it
it's
say
major or
then?
minor.
So what is
I'm having an identity crisis. So, yeah, so now suspend the 4. That's a sus4. Now go to the 3. Hear that? It's suspension to the 3. Now go 4, 2, 3. Play each one as a chord. 4, sus4, sus2. Try it. Now do the same thing and go to G minor. See? You don't know. I mean, that's what a suspension is. Now, there's two different kinds, and then there's also an add. There's an add 2 and an add 4. And all of that means is that you're not suspending the 3, you're adding to it. So in a G add 2 chord, you would have G, A, B, and D. And that has a very pleasant, bright sound. Instead of, it's a sus. No, okay, play it again, please.
G-A-B and...
Yeah, G, A, B, D.
But C is in the 4th position.
Right, but she's playing an add 2, not an add 4. Now play an add 4, one of my personal favorites. Yes. Yeah.
This without third.
Yeah, play add 4.
Sorry?
Add 4. G, B, C, D. That's it. Yeah, love that. There's a rub. Do you hear the rub between these two? Love that sound. That's also a fairly ambiguous sound. It's major. We use that in our worship music almost every time. Not every time, but lots of times. When you go to the 5 chord, that's what it is. It's a 5 with an add 4 in it. So if in the key of G, G, and then like a C sus2, and then a D add 4. It'd be D, F sharp, G. In there. So D, F sharp, G, A, I'm sorry. It's just and that's not a chord you would have heard of like 20 years ago being used all the time. Because there's an amount. What it is there's, because it's a suspension, and suspension usually resolves to the 3, all of a sudden you've got a chord that's got the resolution and the suspension in at the same time. And I was joking with Marcus today, I said, so the guitar player never has to play another chord to resolve, just keeps playing that. Because it has the resolution in it. So that's suspensions and then adds. This is a sort of a pet peeve of mine because it's very often it's not made clear. You'll see like a C2 or C9 or something, and it's not really written out properly. Most of the time when I see C2 like on a song select chart, it usually means C sus2. It's usually that the like if like if C is the tonic chord or the 4 chord, it's usually like a sus2. On the 4 it's usually a sus4 or an add 4. But that's all it is. The 2 and the 4 are your suspensions and they're your add notes. And also you can add 9, which is just adding the 2 an octave higher. Okay, inversions. Just go over this real quick because it's not really that difficult. An inversion means whatever's in the bass. So we'll take this chord that we've already talked about here. For every different note in a chord, and remember a chord has to have 3 different sounding notes. Two notes do not a chord make, even if they're different. For every note that's in a chord, any one of these notes could be in the bass. I am, for now, just going to completely leave those out because it just gets too messy, and nobody ever does a chord with it, with like a G9 chord. It's just, you would call it something else. But let's say for the sake of argument, the first in our 4-part harmony, every one of these can be, this can be the tonic, and it can be in what's called root position. When the G chord is named, that's the lowest note in the bass. This is when you start seeing chords like this. This means that this is first, second, and third. So these are inverted. That means that it's still a G chord, but your lowest note now is a B. That's a first inversion chord. And this is all done to facilitate smooth voice leading in the bass. instead of jumping from here, and then when you're going to D chord, going right to D, you can go from G to F sharp, a half step down, and that's the third of D. That's why we do these kind of things with inversions. That's a second inversion chord, just means that the 5's in the bass. And if you have 4-part harmony, you will often see this chord. It would be a G chord with F in the bass, which would be a third inversion chord. It's a 7th chord too, so it's a third inversion G7 chord. That's all inversions are. And if you had an A minor, you could have A minor in root position. You could have A minor over C or A minor over E. First inversion, second inversion. It's still an A minor. It's just the bass notes change. And they have a different sound. These all have a different sound.
There's no meaning of the last one.
The lowest note of the chord. And you might ask, well, why?
That's usually
strong?
the root, but
Yeah,
in this case,
right.
it's inverted.
Right. The root is when the tonic of the chord is in the bass, then it's in root position. Now, for any chord, like you can have this, like the 7th chord we made here, this is a G7, by the way, the dominant 7th chord. You can have something else, and what I call, what I think most of us would call voicing. Voicing is something different. Inversion is a form of voicing, but voicing isn't an inversion. So, in other words, I could have a G, B, D, F, as long as G's in the root position, I could have, my next note could be D, could be F, whatever. That, in a sense, doesn't matter. What gives the note its harmonic responsibility is what's in the bass, not what's voiced on top of it. Because, like in classical music, you can have chords that have, they're split at the octave, they're like, some instruments are playing an octave, 2 octaves above, and you've got this huge chord. But basically, it's what's in the bass, not what's on top of it. That's what's called the voicing, and that's whether you want, do I want to double my G way up at the top? Do I want to have my D up at the top? Or do I want to go from G to D to split voice it, or do 5th voicing, so I have the 5th verse, and then I put the 3rd on top of that, like that. That's all voicing concerns. And that's where you get these these colors that you, especially, and I always go back to classical music because that's where it's most evident to me, is how much time and effort is spent into the way a chord is voiced. Not necessarily by the chord, like guitar players, whatever just falls on your fingers. But classical composers study and pore over this kind of thing. Where this note's, and the flutes, where am I going to put my next, and the note's going to be right here. And that's what gives you that composite effect. It's another thing, it's music theory and all of this, it's a fairly deep ocean when you get into it. There's lots and lots and lots of music to do. So anyway, you can voice a chord, you can invert a chord, you can suspend a chord, you can add to a chord. In the case of the dominant, you can add an awful lot to a chord. So that's just chords. The last thing I want to do, I'm going to do it real fast, okay? This is the most important aspect of music, believe it or not. After all we've talked to, yeah, sure. Yeah. Six of some hours. And this is the most, 5 minutes for the most important aspect of music. Okay. Well, it is, it's a lot easier to explain really than it is to explain.
You either got it or you don't.
Yeah, that's right. You've all seen this symbol before? Okay. No, actually, that's backwards, it's like this. That just means that there's 4 beats in the measure, and each quarter note gets a beat. Okay, so music has to be, in order for it to be music, it has to be played in time. Yes.
Are there situations where there are more or less beats than 4?
Oh, yes. There's 3/4, there's 2/4, there's 5/4, 6/4, 7/4.
You mean more?
Yeah, beats in a measure?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Do you know how to play Take 5?
As a for instance.
Yeah. That's
It's in
5/4
5/4 time, yeah.
That's just 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3. 7's the same way. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 1, 2, 3. It's not, those are complex compound numbers. 4/4 is your basic, and 3/4 is also very common. 3/4 is like a waltz or like a
3/4
waltz.
versus 6/8.
Well, 3/4, yeah, it depends. To me, 6/8 is when it lilts a little bit.
Okay. I was wondering why.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's the same, well, actually, 6/8 is easier to think of in 2/4 than it is in 3/4. Because you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, right? And to me, 6/8 is more of a, like I said, a lilting, triple feel. This, like with Tony, I was talking about Amazing Grace, that's in 3. That one's not. That's not.
It says 10 here.
So, anyway, yeah, so that's, and 4, this is how I write a rhythm chart. This means that there's, I'll just put, hey, look what I'm going to do. C sus2. So that means that doesn't necessarily mean the rhythm you would play as an acoustic guitar player. That means that there's 4 beats in that measure, and that's how long you're going to stay on the chord. So let's make these quarters. And this is just like a, sort of like a pie chart. So if you have 4/4, you have 4 quarter notes, or 2 half notes, or what a whole note. And then on top of that, then we get down, and for each quarter note, you can have 8 notes. So. So, there you go, 8th notes, 8 of them. And then here, you can have this. Who said 16?
I do.
They won. Okay. So, 1, 2, 3, 4 be quarter notes. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 E and a 2 E and a 3 E and a 4 E and a... That's all there is to rhythm. We're done.
That's the 16th, the one you just did?
Yeah, right there.
I mean, the one you did 1 year.
Yes, 1 E and, yes, I'm sorry. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 E and Really? Is it like that bad?
No.
2 E and That's really all you need to know to tap out rhythms whenever you see them. Because look at this, like Mike and I just talked about. You can have this guy